It's about following what engages you. But it's also been about the people. I really like engaging with ideally smart and creative people. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of crypto per se. I think it's the one asset class which is probably guaranteed to zero at some point. Some of the things that help people at the moment is having all of their investments in a place that they can see them all together and easily organise things. I'd say probably the biggest asset class which is becoming more and more difficult to access is residential property.
What would you advise someone out there? What have you learnt in the legal world?
Look, I think number one is
private markets investments are investors can find some real value. I find the best way to learn is learn from someone who's done it before and given it a go. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, host of Grow Your Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining me here today. On these podcast sessions, we're going to talk through how certain investors have navigated the bumpy road of investing, whether it be through business or investments in general. Thanks for listening today. Welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we explore the strategies and stories of financial success. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we have a very special guest, Bill Fuggle, a distinguished partner at Baker McKenzie. With over 25 years of experience in the legal field, Bill is a leading advisor in listed investment products, FinTech and Neobanks, financial services, regulatory advice, and capital markets. Bill's career is a testament to his profound expertise in the financial services industry and financial services law. He has designed and structured more innovative listed investment products than any other lawyer in Australia, including gold bullion securities and actively managed ETFs. Today, Bill will share his wealth of experience and discuss the evolving landscape of financial products and capital markets, providing practical insights for both seasoned investors and newcomers alike. Let's dive in and learn how to grow our wealth with the expertise of a true legal and financial services professional. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Travis.
I don't know if you remember, Bill, about 15 to 20 years ago at Deutsche, you actually at Baker's worked on my first structured product, PDS. So I know you've been in the game a long time.
That's right. That's it.
Now, let's start at the beginning. Do you want to give us a bit of a potted summary of who you are, what you're currently focused on from a business perspective?
Yeah, sure. Good Sydney boy. Lived here pretty much all my life. Currently, as you say, a partner at Baker McKenzie, heading up our financial services and banking teams.
Yep.
And the main things we're focused on is really around those things from the introduction. So it's really, at the moment, ETFs.
Yep.
Crypto ETFs is a big one at the moment. FinTech, Neobanks, although the Neobanks have had a pretty rough run. Yeah. Just generally anything where there's kind of investment products where there's typically something a bit cutting edge to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because the actively managed ETFs is sort of the next generation, right? It started as the passive beta tracking, and now it's the actively managed is the and so that drove a change in the way products were documented, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. So so really actively managed ETFs did emerge out of Australia. So really it was ourselves and our clients who pioneered that, and they've now been copied pretty much globally.
Gotcha.
So, but that's been a very active area.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, taking a step back, because our listeners often like to hear about the backstory, where you come from. You said Sydney, born and bred. Do you want to take us through your education, where it all started?
Yeah, sure. Product of the public school system.
Gotcha.
Pennant Hills High.
Yeah, gotcha.
Lucky enough that Gough Whitlam paid for my university education.
That's very good, yeah.
Very kind of him, and very much appreciated, I've got to say. So that was University of Sydney.
Yep.
That's about it.
So study law, obviously, staying the obvious.
Economics and law, yeah, and with a slant on the political economy rather than the econometrics side.
Gotcha. And what about going through uni? Was it a useful network for your career? Did you meet anyone you still hang around with now, or was it more of just a learning experience?
Oh, you make a lot of mates at uni who are your friends for life. But I was very lucky because a lot of my friends from high school did eco law or arts law at Sydney, so I had a ready-made friendship group, and a lot of those people are still my very good friends now.
Yeah, that's great. In our early career, I saw in the backstory packing some shelves and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk us through how it started?
Oh yeah, that's the old night field job.
Yeah.
Heavily unionised at the time.
Yeah.
If you went past midnight, it was triple pay.
That's pretty good.
It was very good. We were, it was a pretty happy crew. All uni students were all good mates, and you'd go hard. And if you went past midnight, it was a bingo because it meant you're going to have a great weekend.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, I remember stacking shelves back in Warrigal, where I grew up. It was a good job after school. I never got to 12 o'clock though. I think they got rid of me at about 10. They got the more experienced people in.
Well, they probably knew about the triple time, so
yeah, very good. Now, so a couple of people have influenced you. If you go through the top three, it can be personal, professional life. So go through a couple of people that made a difference for you.
Yeah, well, I guess, like most people, it's probably your family who is the biggest influence. So your mum and dad, brothers and sisters.
Yep.
Dad was in financial services, so that might have influenced me subconsciously, I suspect, with some of my choices. And but then there's also people along the way in your career. So I spent a lot of time working with a person who works with you nowadays, Astrid Reid. So Astrid and I worked together for about 20 years.
Gotcha.
And there's been a lot of people out there from a client side who have been just really strong thinkers and innovators who have helped get things done. People like Stuart Rowe and John Gilbert, who's with you now.
Gotcha.
We did a lot with John back in the early days of what we call DPAs.
Yep.
And then also people like Graham Tuckwell, who was the founder of Gold Bullion Securities and did the world's first gold ETF.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, Astrid, as you mentioned, works with us. Very talented lawyer. A lot of talented lawyers come out of Baker's. Is that they all your work?
No, I wouldn't take credit for that. But no, we've got a very strong brand, so you do tend to attract people with inherent ability.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that they go on to great things.
Yeah, Baker's always had that reputation of if something's a little bit different, off centre, off piste. Baker's was someone that could think that through front to back and come up with a legal solution. I think it's a credit, I guess. Yeah,
well, we've definitely gone for that, especially in the financial services team. Really right back from day dot, we've been the ones who have been able to work with our clients to figure out the solution. So how do you do a gold ETF? How do you do an actively managed ETF?
Yeah.
How do you do a brand new bank from scratch, for example?
Gotcha. Well, in iPartners, our first legals, master and sub trust type arrangement was done by Bakers and Astrid. So,
Indeed.
iPartners has got a connection as well. Now, a couple of pivotal moments in your career. It sounds like you kind of went from uni into the law. Is there a couple of moments that made a difference for you?
I started out with a firm which is now Norton Rose, and then went to one of the really big ones, which is now KWM. It's the old Mallisons.
Yep.
And then shifted over to Baker's about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess the things which have really been pivotal for me is mainly about following my interest. So I just kind of noticed that I was particularly interested in structures.
Gotcha.
I was interested in markets. I was interested in the financial side of things. So I think it's really just been about recognising what I'm interested in and kind of leaning into that.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. Gotcha. And is it about solving a problem, or is it just intellectually more interesting?
It's about, well, I suppose it's mainly about problem solving. I love a good puzzle.
Yeah.
So it's about the problem solving, but it's also about building expertise. Once you sort of build, I call them building blocks. If you have 17 different building blocks and you can reorganise them in different ways, that's what's going to give you your solutions when you're looking for product design.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And a bit of a why, what drives you in business. You've kind of just gone into that now. Is that do you think that was something that came through when you were younger? Were you sort of intellectually curious in the puzzles, in the solving problems, or you think you just kind of grew into it and that's just what drives you now?
Look, I think it's kind of always been that way. It's about following what engages you. But it's also been about the people.
Yeah.
I really like engaging with smart people, ideally smart and creative people.
Yep.
And so I think the mixture of the problem solving, coming up with those solutions and engaging with intellectually strong people, for me, that's quite a heady mix.
Yeah, gotcha. Gets you excited. And like, if I was just thinking that sort of left field ones, have you ever thought of jumping out into more of the private world? Because you've got so much connections to, from a career perspective.
Yeah, look, it has, it keeps on cropping up over the years. And there's a few times when I thought I was going to jump into an investment bank or go into a boutique or whatever. But I don't know, maybe I was too conservative, or maybe just when those opportunities were arising, maybe sometimes the economy would be all of a sudden tanking a bit and you think, actually, maybe just better stay where I am.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, I have thought about it on many occasions, but have never actually jumped.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit about timing, right? You got a bit of luck and a bit of timing.
That's right.
Be right. And on that legal front, because a lot of entrepreneurs listen to the podcast, but what would be the key legal considerations for entrepreneurs to be aware of when launching, an innovative financial product? What could trip them up?
Oh, look, I think the key thing is to understand what your proposition is, what your sales proposition is. So if you're trying to sell something which other people are already doing well, it's very, very hard.
Yeah.
If people are out there already doing index ETFs, for example, and you think, geez, it'd be awesome if I was an index ETF issuer, you're probably not going to get very far because you've got these big pre-existing players, very, very hard to compete against.
Low fees as well, right?
Yeah, very, very low. And so what you've got to do is really think about what it is that's kind of the next thing that people need, but maybe they don't realise they need. And so you've got to be able to understand what it is that people would want that's not necessarily easily accessible at the moment.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah, differentiated basically. Interesting you say that. A new pizza shop just opened around the corner from me, which is great, right? Because I like pizza. But there's about 8 pizza shops where I live, and I was thinking, how's this business going to actually make money? But I mean, obviously, there's an entrepreneur behind it who thinks they can do it differently and make some money. But I just thought it seems tough to me.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. And if you look at the people who have done well, you look at these crypto ETFs that are launched in the US over the last 3 months or so. There's a lot of money gone into those. If you look at the actively managed ETFs, that's just been a gold mine. And mentioning gold, then there was a gold ETF.
True.
The whole point behind the gold ETF was that you heard the gold price every day on the radio, and you could read it in the newspaper.
Yeah,
but it was actually quite hard to get access to it.
Gotcha.
So the whole proposition was there was something in all of those. There was something that people were just waiting for to have easier access to.
Yeah.
If you could give them the access, you're generating value.
Yeah,
and that's how you do well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I always wanted iron ore. You hear about iron ore a lot, right? Like an ETF that could give you some kind of exposure that I would have thought's interesting. There's an idea for someone out there if they can solve that one. Iron ore ETF. Now, I guess it links into this, my next question actually, evolving landscape for financial products, capital markets. So where do you see that going? So this obviously crypto is a big one at the moment. And what challenges do you think that they'll face?
Yeah, look, crypto, I'm a bit with the SEC on that. Whilst we've been very fortunate to have done almost all of the crypto ETFs in Australia, and there are a couple already up and running with SIBO, and more coming down the pipeline. But having said that, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of crypto per se. I think it's the one asset class which is probably guaranteed to zero at some point.
Gotcha.
Which is not to say that you can't make an enormous amount of money, potentially for decades.
Gotcha.
That's an asset class which could have a very strong run for a very long time.
Yep.
But I think it's mainly about it's just about thinking ahead as to what it is that will help people. So, and so some of the things that help people at the moment is having all of their investments in a place that they can see them all together and easily organise things.
True.
So one of the biggest problems people have is actually keeping track of everything.
Very true.
And often people don't want to invest in a particular type of asset because they just know it's going to be an extra thing they've got to try and keep an eye on. And it's not necessarily all being pulled together into one space in terms of monitoring and understanding what's going on. So I think what I'm seeing in the market at the moment is a lot more of people trying to provide those kind of holistic portals where people can better understand what's going on in one spot.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's iPartners platform's a little bit like that, sort of for alternative assets. But I totally agree. And it's always been a problem in Australia is how do you house multi-assets across different sort of exposures in one location? I suppose that's where the bigger platforms, what they're trying to solve for at the moment. Another point I think is a good one you made. It's you think about your gold bullion that you worked on and crypto. A lot of that's simply about access. It's about the average punter, well, not punter, right? Average investor getting access to stuff that's historically hard to get access to. How do you solve that? Bundle it into ETF, whack it on an exchange. Or, bundle it up and put it on a platform where an investor can log into, view it, invest in it, and monitor it over time. So it's definitely an interesting space. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode.
I'd say probably the biggest asset class which is becoming more and more difficult to access is residential property. So I'm sort of imagining that someone's going to pop up in my office sometime in the next year or two with residential property-based products because the prices are just kind of getting out of this world in Australia. So a lot of people are getting locked out of that market.
Yeah.
And to the extent people are not locked out but want to be in it, it can be quite a significant thing to be buying and managing and maintaining property. So I think there's probably something there.
Yeah, for sure.
That could, well up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a few things popping up, like shared equity type exposures and unitised type exposures and partial fractional ownership, all those sorts of things. But yeah, I think you're right. It's probably an opportunity starting to come through. Yeah, to do one property is pretty tough.
Yeah, that's right.
The old days of borrowing some money and buying an investment property. It's a big number you need to borrow these days to do that, if that's the strategy. Yeah,
and it can be quite volatile. You get some tenants, they're good tenants, they're bad tenants.
Yep.
You buy a property, it's, some problem emerges or no problem emerges. So if you can somehow spread those risks, you've got stamp duty, you've got government, all sorts of different things.
Corporate and all sorts of things flow through.
Yeah, so if you can make that easier for people so that people can find a way to get those exposures without all the hassles, I reckon that might be an interesting one.
Gotcha. Fair enough. And you're the person who can do the legals when it comes along.
Well, that's right. You've got to get someone to solve all the problems of how to
Someone's got to wrap
navigate
it up, right?
that.
Like if someone has to, every financial product that people invest in, it's been wrapped into a legal structure, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a unit trust, deferred purchase agreement, a note or equity hybrid, whatever it is. It's got to be wrapped up to make it investable. And that's the legal wrapper, what makes a big difference for investors.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's pre-packaged for them. It makes it off the shelf.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you've got to think really carefully about that piece because, frictional costs are a big issue with a lot of different asset classes, especially property, where you do have stamp duty. But also just general tax outcomes are really important, whether you've got it in an entity which is being taxed itself or whether there's a pass-through tax outcome where the tax has to be managed at the investor level.
Yeah, very good. Now, of your career, key learnings, what would you advise someone out there? What have you learnt in the legal world?
Look, I think number one is lean into your interests.
Yep.
If you're doing something just because someone told you to do it, your mum and dad told you to do it, for example, and you do see that a lot with the kids these days, that, mum and dad want them to be a doctor or a lawyer, typically. If you're not interested in that, you're wasting your time because if you're not interested, you'll never become the best, because if you're not interested, you're not going to lean into it.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the subject matter expertise, and you're not going to be able to provide the service.
Yeah, it's true.
So number one, I think, is just follow your interest.
Yeah.
And then probably number two is about trying to surround yourself or engage yourself with smart, capable people.
Yeah.
And that, that might be your work colleagues, it might be your clients, it might be other stakeholders, but you want to get as many smart, capable people around you as possible,
Sure.
and as few people who don't meet that criteria.
Correct. Filter them one of those ones out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, very good. Now, any top tips if someone was trying to start a new business?
Look, I've seen people do it mainly two ways of being successful. There's what I call the big hit, where you just really sort of just go for the gusto.
Yep.
And I've seen some people make enormous amounts of money doing that.
Yeah.
And the other one is just the consistent, steady approach.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to think about that. So the big hit, good examples of that would be, we've mentioned a couple of times the gold bullion securities.
Yep.
The founders of gold bullion made extraordinary amounts of money by coming up with a really great idea and taking a lot of risk and executing it.
Yeah.
Others would have been, there's people, I've had clients in the pharmaceutical industry who got into generic pharmaceuticals when it was nascent, I guess, and they took a lot of risk and made incredible amounts of money. But it's a little bit like rock stars, I guess. There's many are trying and very few are successful. So the big hit can be wonderful if it works.
Yeah.
But where you really see a lot higher success rate, and probably not as big a success, but much bigger success in terms of percentage likelihood, is the grafters, just grafting away.
Gotcha.
And that's about being consistent. It's about being stable.
Yeah.
If you are going to change what you're doing, try not to just chuck everything else you've done in the garbage heap and start in an area you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Try to build from what you've already got and make kind of evolutionary changes rather than revolutionary changes to what you're doing. So those are the ones, I think the vast majority of people who have done well financially, they're not going to ever be on the rich list, but they're going to have very comfortable lives, and so are their kids.
Yeah.
And it's by that grafting away approach.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of the people I see are successful in, say, their day job working for someone, and they see a problem that could possibly be done better in their firm or an opportunity, and they jump out and they have a go at that opportunity and build it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem to take longer than what people think, and so that requires grind. The idea of launching a business in a year's time, it's IPO'd and you're high-fiving everyone, it's pretty rare. People think it takes 2-3. You think it's 2 to 3, it's often 7-8. It's just how it rolls.
Yeah, and look,
most of the time.
The vast majority of my clients are boutiques.
Yeah.
Often they're fund managers or fintechs, like iPartners, who have really had that strong background where they've built up subject matter expertise and they've jumped out on their own.
Yep.
So, I've probably got 40 clients like that.
Gotcha.
And they're usually very smart, very capable people, but it does take time from when they make that decision to jump until when they're, living the life to which they would like to become accustomed.
Yeah, good on them. Now, definition of success for you.
Oh, look, it probably goes back to what I was saying before. I think, obviously you've got to sort of look after your base level things like your financial well-being and your family and friendships. But I think where the real cream is in that sense of engagement. If you're deeply engaged in what you're doing and you're getting a strong level of fulfillment and enjoyment out of that, that's success. Because that's like all day, every day. If you're doing that, that's, what I would call living your best life.
Yeah,
and you need to sort of supplement that with good physical health. So you want to, be getting out doing whatever it is you do to support your physical well-being.
Yep.
But from a career perspective, it's that sense of engagement.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. Gotcha. It's funny you mentioned a couple of times about you kind of got to do what you enjoy, do what you love. Well, I think of sport's a way to just simplify thinking, right? Think about when you're younger, people were good at sport. It's not necessarily the ones that were good at sport ended up going on to be professional sort of athletes, but it was the ones that loved it, wanted to work hard, trained harder, and just really enjoyed it. I think that sporting analogy back to business. If you don't love it, you don't enjoy it, and you don't want to work hard to develop skills in it, then you probably should do something else. And so I think that sort of comes through a couple of times you've mentioned.
Yeah. Look, I think that's right. You know, I remember when I was at high school, I had a couple of brothers, one 18 months older, one 18 months younger, and they were much better at sport than I was.
Gotcha.
But, you know, you've just got to, it doesn't really matter if you're the best one at the particular sport. It matters if you're enjoying it and if you're going to have longevity keeping on doing it.
Yeah, if you're going to turn up to training every week, you're going to keep pushing through.
That's right.
It's a nice way to simplify things. Actually, you got on that front, you're one of six.
Yep, that's it.
What number were you?
Number 2.
Okay. And then you had one older brother, one younger brother?
Yeah, well, 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters and
Gotcha.
1 older brother,
Any decent fights at home? Or was it nice?
Yeah, mainly
Everyone was friendly.
No, it was pretty wild actually. You know, number 3, my brother, Ray, he was a bit of a wild child.
Yeah, gotcha.
He'd like take on me, the oldest brother, Jim, who was like twice as big as me and Ray. And when he couldn't beat Jim, then he'd try and take me on. So it was, always a bit of fun.
If only you had cameras back then, you could replay it all. Every other kid now has got it totally recorded.
Mate, no mobile phones, no internet. Yeah. Just had to make your own fun.
You could put an assault claim on your brothers using on the evidence from the phones.
That's it.
Now, this one's often hard to answer, right? But, you know, what legacy do you think you're living and leaving?
Look, you know, I reckon the thing which the world is starting to lose a bit is the sense of egalitarianism, the sense of coming together and working to a common goal. And so I do try to focus my team and and just more broadly at Baker McKenzie, people on the idea of bringing people together.
Gotcha.
And trying to sort of overcome some of these polarizations in society.
Gotcha.
And I think a lot of that is just about that if you see something that's not right, you do need to be prepared to speak up and say, hey, you know, we need to do this a bit better. And at the same time, you need to factor in the interests of a lot of different groups to try to pull people together rather than tear them apart.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is a tough thing when a business grows. You get different personalities, different interests, and trying to break down sometimes silos to bring people together. Sometimes you got to invent reasons to bring them together, and sometimes you got to have sort of a joint goal that does it. But it is tough.
It can be really tricky. Part of the problem is that there's not always just one right way of doing things.
True.
And so just because you know, potentially, you know, by the time you're a senior person, perhaps you're in a position of leadership, just because the way you like to do things works doesn't mean that there's no other way of making things work. So you might see someone else is doing something is not how you would do it. It might be a really stupid way of doing it and you need to stop them doing it, but it might actually be perfectly legit way of doing it. It's just not how you do it.
Yeah.
So it does require a real flexibility of thought to understand what's working and what's not working. Yeah,
agree. It takes a degree of confidence in a way, right? Like to prepare to step back and say they probably know what they're doing. They're probably going to work it out, and I probably don't know everything. So I'll get out of the way and see where this lands.
Well, that's right, and it can be a bit confronting, right? Because it's easier just to say, oh, that's not how I do it, so therefore. But that could potentially drive away people who are doing things in a perfectly successful way.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you also need to be careful that if someone might be doing something in a way which is going to, you know, really blow up in everyone's faces. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, I know something with when I'm managing the team, is often not making the decisions yourself. You think you know the answer, you can probably make the decision, but it kind of someone else owns the decision, and so you got to often not answer, and it allows other people the freedom to make the call. And by doing that, they get better at making decisions, and then it kind of helps people grow. Well, that's the theory anyway. It's, stepping back's kind of often quite valuable.
I think especially learning to listen. I think people who are, if they've been, pretty smart at high school and pretty smart at uni and whatnot, they're very used to being the one who's right and being the one who talks a lot. And one thing coming back to people who've influenced me, one of my partners many years ago at Baker's told me I just had to talk less and listen more.
Not bad, yeah.
And I thought, well, why would I do that? Everything comes out of my mouth is 100% true. No, but of course I gave it a whirl, and it's actually been really good advice that if you just, you might, it may be that you've already come up with the best idea, but if you just sit back and listen, you might enhance that idea. And it also gives everyone else a chance to have their contribution.
Yep, totally agree. Righto, we're getting the back end now. Some quick fire questions. I think you've already told me your first job, but I want to know if there's a job before the first job. When were you first actually out there getting $1?
You know what? One of my brothers and I, we had a family combi van back in the day, the VW combi.
Yeah, it's good.
And we struck a deal when my older brother got his driver's license when he was like 17 to deliver groceries. And so we'd pull the middle seat out of the combi, and we would plot out a delivery course, and we'd
It's pretty good.
take all the people who didn't have a car or whatever their
Make him
groceries.
drive.
He was driving, and I was the muscle.
That's pretty good, isn't it? So the brother was useful.
Yeah, I was the big brother. That was Jim. Right?
Ah, gotcha.
He was the responsible one. He's a lawyer as well
That would
nowadays.
have been interesting if you'd kept that car. Combi vans these days, fully sort of specced up, looking pretty good.
Yeah. The combi's a special vehicle.
Yeah. Piece of advice for your younger self.
Probably just be confident, but don't be overconfident. Just take a little bit more care.
Gotcha. What motivates you the most as a person?
It's probably just the involvement with other people, the human interaction.
Brilliant. What are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
Look, I reckon the grafting away is for 98% of people's the way to go.
Agree. Biggest mistake you see people make when building wealth?
Well, I guess the opposite. They go for a big hit. They think they're going to be able to do something, and it turns out they can't, and then they've got serious setbacks.
Yeah, making money quickly it's a rare thing.
Yeah.
When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
I'm a skier. I'm a kayaker.
Gotcha.
Bit of snorkeling, bit of mountain biking. So anything that gets me outdoors, really.
Water ski or downhill?
No, snow skiing.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, the season's coming on.
Yeah, Perisher, Epic Pass.
Gotcha.
Japan. It's great.
Brilliant. Now, if anyone's interested in connecting with Bill, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. We'll include the link in the notes. But appreciate your time, Bill. It was great to have a chat.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.